Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for joining today's live webinar. My name is Ben and I'm a customer success manager here at monday.com. And today we're going to talk about how you can use a formula to boost your workflow and to provide you with more insight into the data on your boards. I understand that the formula column can be quite intimidating for most users. This webinar is going to both show you how to use a formula column, which is actually much less scary than it may seem, and most of all, help you explore the benefits that you can get from using this column. We're going to start quite basic and then expand to many other use cases. I understand that the majority of the people here have never played around with the formula column, and so this is a great way to start. It may get a bit complicated, and I will be sharing this deck with you as well as the recording, so you have nothing to worry about. You can look at it again afterwards. Okay, so what are we going to do? Like I said, we're going to start with the basics about the column, the logic behind it. We're going to discuss the options when using this column, as well as the features that are not yet available. From there, we're going to discuss the different use cases built specifically on tickets, common tickets that we have received, along with many tricks that we are going to use that can help you boost your performance. Finally, we're going to address some common mistakes. Once you know what to look out for, you'll be able to break down all of the intimidating aspects of this formula, and you'll be able to tackle this great column on any of your boards. Finally, we're going to have a 25-minute live Q&A to answer all of your questions. So I'll be randomly stopping throughout the presentation to answer the specific questions that you have. The reason for this is the formula column can get quite confusing, and so we'll have a live question at the end, as well as a potential random stop just to explain everything. Okay, awesome. So the first thing that I want to do is present our use case for the day. I want to give you a quick introduction into this use case and the board, and from there you will see how the formula column helps me enhance the board to a new level. I am a huge comics books fan, just a little bit of background about myself, and so I am exclusively selling superhero t-shirts. Now, each t-shirt has its own specific pricing. Each order comes in through its own specific way. Now, this is the high-level overview of every single order that is coming in. Over here, we have the lower level with every step, the styling, weighting, assembling, labeling, etc., all the way until delivery. Over here, we have the costs. This is how much it's costing me to keep Joey as an employee that's been working in this time tracking column. This is an awesome feature only in the Pro plans. I would recommend playing around with that if you haven't yet also. And how we derive a lot of information from all of this. The next thing that I want to show you is quickly what this formula column looks like. So this is what the column looks like. As you can see on the left-hand side, we have all of the columns. As you can see here, formulas are included. You can add the drop-down column, a date column, your name, phone number, email address, and notes. So you can have a lot of different options of columns within this formula column. There are limitations, and we're going to discuss that at a later point. For example, timeline is not a column that is available. From there, I'm going to close the columns, and I'm going to go into the functions. These are all of the possibilities that we can have within the formula column. Now I'm going to go hover over something random like minus. And as you can see on the right, we have a summary of the formula and an example. The example is extremely important because this shows you exactly how they expect you to build this formula so it works for you. So what you would do is you would add in the minus, you open the bracket, the 5, you break it up by a comma, and then you add the 3 and you close it. Don't worry, I will be explaining this into more depth. But this is the general overlook of what a formula column looks like. Okay, great. Now, the first thing that I want to do is figure out the types of cost calculation. Where would that be important? Well, let's go back to the specific use case. Captain America, every single time someone orders Captain America, they an automatic situation comes up where it tells me it's $30. Why is that important? Because each one of these options have a different cost. So Captain America is going to cost me 30, Iron Man is going to cost me 20, and Thor is going to cost me 15. And then I need to times all of these by the amount of shirts that they want. So how do we go about this? Well, there's a few ways to do this. Like all calculations, there are many different ways to go about it. So these are just the different examples so I can show you that flexibility. So the first thing would be the typical way to do it. You have the variable 1, you have variable 2, and you put a star in to signal a multiply. Now, I just want to have a quick disclaimer over here. I'm South African, as you can probably tell by my accent, and so back home, we refer to this as a bracket, this as a bracket, and more specifically, this is a curly bracket. I understand that some of you use other words. I don't want to confuse myself and therefore confuse you, so I'm going to beg you to bear with me in this. Okay, great. So the first way is we can have variable 1, variable 2, and times it over there. And this will give us the exact result that we're looking for. But many people do not know that star is a representative for times, or a dash is a representative for minus. And so for that very reason, we have these formulas. So I'm going to go and I am going to take down the column. I'm then going to find the exact thing that I'm looking for. So right now I'm looking to multiply. So I find the multiply, and as you can see, as I click on it, it automatically populates with an open and a closed bracket over here. Once I do that, I then go and look at what the example is telling me to do. So it's telling me to add variable 1 and variable 2 and break it up with a comma. So I go to my columns and I find the variable that I'm interested in. So the first is shirt quantity. I break it up with a comma, and then I do cost per product and I set it. And as you can see, all of these are automatically populated. Elizabeth is asking how you can turn subtitles on. I apologize for my accent. As far as I know, there are no subtitles, but bear with me and I will speak slowly. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is how we would automatically populate this over here. Now that is great and that is very nice, and that gives us the answer over here. But we don't want to go ahead and start putting in the cost per product every single time that we need to. Right? We want this to be done automatically. What do I mean by that? I want to say that if the user picked Captain America, if the customer picked Captain America, I want it to automatically populate here as 30. If they pick Iron Man, I want it to be automatically populated as 20. And if they pick Thor, I want it to be automatically populated in 15. Now, I'm just going to stop over here quickly. Again, the formula, Erin is asking if the formula total is in dollars. As you can see, the total income here is in dollars, and here it has not been specified as dollars. You don't want to add it in over here, and I'll explain why at a later point. You simply need to click on the sum button, and I can pick dollars as my unit, and as you can see, it automatically populates. So yes, that is how you go ahead and do that. Okay, great. So what I am trying to do is I'm trying to get this to automatically populate. I can do this through an if statement. So what the first thing that I need to do is I need to define my variables. So the first thing that I'm going to do is this has been created through a drop-down column, and the first variable, the condition that I need to define is if it equals Thor, then it's going to cost 15. If the drop-down equals Iron Man, then it's going to cost 20. And if the drop-down equals Captain America, then it's going to cost me 30. Now I can go ahead and start this formula by simply finding the if statement that is discussed. And as you can see, an open and close bracket comes in automatically. And from there, we build this calculation. Now I understand that this looks quite intimidating. Once we start breaking it down, you're going to see that it is not nearly as intimidating as you think. And let's get started. So the first thing that I do is the automatic if statement has been put in, and an open and a closed bracket has been put in. From there, I pick the drop-down column that I am interested in. I add an equal sign and I write Thor. Now, as you can see, I put quotation marks over Thor. I then say, and I will address why I did that in a second. I then say, if the drop-down column equals Thor, then I want you to generate the number 15 for me. Or if it equals Iron Man, then I want you to generate 20 for me. And if it equals Captain America, then I want you to generate 30. If it equals none of those, then I want you to give me 0. Now, a common mistake that we often see throughout the tickets that we have received is whether or not you should put the quotation marks over here or over here. Well, let me simplify it. Quotation marks are exclusively used for strings. Strings are basically anything that has more than just a number in. So as you can see, Thor over here is not just numbers, and therefore I'm adding the quotation marks. The 15 that I want to generate is not $15, but just 15, and that is why I don't put the quotation marks. If I want it to be $15, then I would be adding this, and then I would be adding the quotation marks. But please note, if you do that, then the system is no longer able to use that 15 as part of the calculation. Okay, great. Now, another thing that I want to highlight right here is to always make sure that for every open bracket that we have a closed bracket. So here, this seems pretty simple. We have 1, 2, 3 open brackets. We have 3 closed ones here. We seem to be good right now. I understand that this doesn't look too intimidating right now. You're going to see in the future why we need to do that. The next thing that people want to know is if it's possible to combine a calculation and an if statement. So where would that be important? Well, for example, let's go back to the original situation over here. And now I want to figure out if any given order goes over and above the break-even point, or if it is under. So what is a break-even point? It is basically anything that goes above the fixed cost. So a fixed cost would be, let's say I need to employ 14 people to come into my t-shirt manufacturing company and start working. Now, if they are making 100 t-shirts a day, or if they are making 3 t-shirts a day, they're still going to be they're still going to have to earn the same amount. And so I need to see if any given order goes over and above that or not. So I want to see if this order is bigger than this. So I'm going to go back here. So as you can see, I've used this with an if statement. If the shirt quantity times the cost per product is bigger than the fixed cost, which is a column, so this is drawing information from a column, then I want you to say break even. If it's not, then not there yet. Now, why did I put a comma, a closed bracket over here? Well, in order to let you know that, I first need to explain the point of the brackets. Brackets are used to provide clarity in the order of operations, the order in which several operations should be done in a mathematical expression. So what am I saying? I'm saying that first I need you times shirt quantity and cost per product. And once you've generated that, that's when I want you to see if it is bigger than the fixed cost or if it is smaller. So effectively, we can be looking at it like this. If X is bigger than fixed cost, then break even. If not, then not there yet. So these can also be used in order to help you simplify the information. This can look quite intimidating. It doesn't have to be once you start breaking things down. I just want to stop for a second and go into the questions, see if there is anything pertaining to the specific formula that I just wrote. We have some compliments on my English, which is flattering, but not what we're looking for right now. Okay, It looks like most of the questions don't have exact reference to this, so I will be addressing them all at a later point. Calculating the billable hours. So this is also a common question that we get from a lot of our customers. Now, it seems relatively simple in order to calculate, but people do run into a few issues, and so I want to address them head on right here. So what do I mean by that? Well, we have 3 employees over here, Joey, Monica, and Rachel. We have their managers, but we're not going to focus on that. Each one of them comes into work every day and starts their clock and says how long they are working. Now, also, according to their negotiation skills, they have different amounts that they are earning per hour. And we want to go ahead and we want to figure out how much they are actually earning and how much we actually need to pay them at the end of the day. So what is the formula that we use to do this? This is what it looks like. Again, it looks intimidating. It's really quite simple. Why do we have round written here? Why are we randomly dividing by 3,600? And why is there 1 at the end? Let me explain. The time tracking column generates the information in seconds. So even though we can see this here in hours, when we use it in a formula, it is actually presenting the number that we have in seconds. So we divide by the amount of seconds they are in an hour in order to give us the result that we want. Once we have done that, so once we have closed this bracket and generated the result there, we then times it by price per hour and we get the answer that we want. Pretty simple. But why is there the round there? Well, the round you can basically think of as a beautician. It comes here just to make things pretty and make things look better. The round tells me how much my answer is going to be to what decimal point. So because I've written 1 here, it's going to be to 1 decimal point. If I change this to 2, it's going to be to 2 decimal points. And if I change it to 3, it will be 3. What do I mean by that? Well, if I go ahead into this calculation, exactly the one that I explained to you earlier, and I change this number right here to 2, look over here, you can see that it changes to 360.35 instead of 4. Now, if I change it to 3, well, this stays the same, but this comes to 3 variables. So because I'm not interested in all of those decimals, I'm keeping it to round to 1. So all that we need to do is times column 1 by column 2. We remember to divide by 3,600. And in order to make everything look neat and professional, we use the round. Okay. Now, many people want to know that how can one calculate the remaining budget after that? So what do we mean by that? Once we've worked out that Joey over here is earning $360, we've only budgeted $400 for them. So we now need to work out what the difference is, how much more Joey can work before we say to him, listen, buddy, I think it's time that you take a break. So how do we do that? Well, this is the calculation that we need. The first thing, as you can see here, is this is the original calculation that we used. So I'm sure you all understand it. The time tracking divided by 3,600 times price per hour, and then we minus all of that by the total budget. But this is also a perfect example for me to explain to you the use of brackets. The brackets gives us those stages. So the first thing that we need to do is work out what this answer is. So let's say this answer is 360. Once we've done that, then we can minus it by the total budget, and only then do we round it to the right decimal point. So the brackets are there to help you with the stages. Now, this is also a great opportunity to show you why the brackets can be confusing. The foolproof trick that I do is I simply count. Now, we understand, before I show you what I mean by that, we understand the rationale of why the brackets go where. Now I want to show you how to make sure that we have the right ones. And I simply count the amount of open brackets to closed. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 open brackets. And we do it the other way around. How many closed do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. That is it. We have 4 and 4. Seems like we are on the right track. So this is a great trick that I use that helps me a fortune. Most people think I am a genius when I fix a a formula when someone sends in a question. Really, I'm just adding in a bracket somewhere. So be on the lookout for that. Okay, great. The next thing that people always want to know is if it's possible to calculate the days since the dot date, or basically play around with dates. This is actually a question that I see in the question section now, so I'm glad that I could address it. What do I mean by that? Well, basically this. Let's say an order comes in on the 21st of August, and I have promised my customer that it will be at their door by 30 working days, right? So how do I go ahead and work that out to see if I am over or if I'm above, or really just how many days that is? Well, this is the formula for that. Now, we have days, right? Now, what is days? Days is a function that we have created, and I'm going to go ahead and find that to show you. And what the days does is it returns the number of days between the two dates. Now, this is a perfect example to show you why the example is so important. What it does is it tells me here to write days with an open and close bracket, and it tells me to write the end date column first, name first, break it up with a comma, and then the start date, and that will give me the difference between these days. Okay, great. So now we understand in theory that I need to go with the latest date minus that, which the days already does, by the order date. But the question is what is today? Well, today is another function that we have created. And I'm going to go and find it for you over here. And what it does is it generates the day of whatever the date is. And now this is updated daily. So if I add in today, it's going to be the 25th of September. Tomorrow, it's automatically going to change to the 26th. And what it does is, because this is a function that has been created, it automatically generates an open and a closed bracket. Do not worry about that. Leave that blank. Ignore that. It can just be left like that. So what I'm effectively doing is simply saying today, from the order date, how many days are there in between? But if I'm going to be 100% honest with you, which most of the time is the right thing to do, this isn't exactly what the user is asking for. This isn't what we want, because we want to know how many business days it is since the order. Because we know within these 35 days, or within these 7 days, there's been X amount of weekends, and we've promised it to be in X amount of business days. So how do we do that? How do we calculate the number of days between a start and end date, excluding the weekend? Well, this is how we do it. Again, you can start by ignoring the round. It is there to make things pretty. And as you can see, this is the original sum that I created. So now we know the total, right? We know that the total is 35 days. Now, what have we done in this bracket over here? Well, the first thing is we found the week number. Week number is exactly like today or days. It is a function that we have created. And what it does is returns the yearly week number of a given date. So what does that mean? Let's say the given date that we're talking about is the 1st of December. That is the 48th week of the year. And so 48 would be what is generated. So what I'm going to do is I'm saying, generate for me the week of today. So let's say that is 42, right? So we can effectively write 42 over here. Okay, and then we want the week number of the order date. So that can effectively be, let's say it is 38. And now we say 42 minus 38, that gives us 4. And what we're saying is times this by 2, because there are 2 days in every single, 2 weekend days in every single week. And now we have an answer of 8. Once we have an answer of 8, we minus that by the original 35, and we get the answer that we were looking for. So that is this over here, 25.5. Again, I rounded it to 1 decimal place. And as you can see, this is the order over here. Now, I understand that this can be quite intimidating. And so I want to go over this again. What did I do? I took the original the original formula, which is the total number of days in between all of this. I then minused it by the week number of today minus the week number of the order date times to the amount of weekend days within that given time frame. So within 4 weeks, we have 2 in each day, that is 8, we minus it by the total number of days. Okay, great. Now, the last formula that I want to go ahead and show you before I start talking about common mistakes and limitations is a status based on multiple conditions. So what do I mean by that? I have this order over here, and I want to know if it is over X amount of days, not including the weekends, including the weekends, whatever your formula decides, as well as the fact that it is not being delivered, then I want you to let me know that we are over time. And if we are not over time, then well done. So how do we go ahead and do that? Well, the formula basically looks like this. It's the simple if statement. So just for right now, get rid of the and you can see that if something equals to X, then over time, if it doesn't equal to X, then well done. But we have added another function in here called and. And what and does is it makes sure that both variables are true. If both variables are true, is basically what we're saying, then give me overtime. If not, give me well done. So variable 1 is if days since order is over 4, is bigger than 4, and you can see with the comma over here, the delivery status is equal to waiting, then we are clearly over time. If the day since order is 15, but the order status is completed or sent or delivered or whatever I wrote and decided, then give me well done, because it doesn't make a difference if we're over the date, this has already been completed, and vice versa. If it's still waiting, but we're under the days, then we're not over time, we still have time in order to do it. So I hope that makes sense. Now, I want to discuss the common mistakes, and this is simply to prevent you from getting overwhelmed. Once you understand these mistakes, you will be able to address it, and you won't be intimidated by this column anymore. So first of all, this is case sensitive. So I'm going to find a formula and explain to you what I mean. I addressed this earlier, but I want to address it again. Everything in this column is case sensitive. What we are doing over here is we are telling this system to look for a drop down. Look for the drop down called drop down. But if I make it a lowercase d, it is going to be looking for this drop down perpetually, and it's never going to find it because it is case sensitive. So either copy or paste, or make sure that you are spelling it correctly, because this is a common mistake that we see. The same thing happens over here. What we are doing is we are telling it to look into this drop down and generate the answer over here. But if it cannot find Ironman with a capital I or a lowercase I or whatever the situation is, it's not going to find it. It's not going to generate 20, which means I'm not going to get the total income over here, etc., etc. So please be on the lookout for case sensitive. The second thing is commas. We didn't actually get into this as much as I probably should have highlighted. The commas are there to break things up. So if the drop down equals Thor, then give me 15. Or if the drop down equals Ironman, then give me 20. It is quite often that we see something like this because the customer, the user, is unaware that you need to start breaking it up, and the system doesn't recognize what you are then asking from it. So pay attention to the commas. They are quite important, but also quite intuitive, so you can understand. We also have brackets. Now, brackets are super important, and I went over this a lot. Here is a perfect example of how you can use it. We have two closed brackets over here and here, all within this large one over here. So basically, this can help you both understand the path and what you need to do, as well as help the system. So the first thing we're going to calculate is the time divided by 3,600, then that answer times by hours, by price per hour, and then only then are we going to minus that by the total budget. So this just breaks the stages up and gives you a better understanding into what you're asking the system to do. The last thing is quotation marks. Now I'm going to go back to the if statement that I discussed earlier. These quotation marks are especially important for strings, for something that needs to be generated that isn't just numbers. Like I said earlier, if this was going to be a $15, then because it is something other than just numbers, it would have to have the quotation marks. If this happens, this means that you're not going to be able to use it in the calculation. So what I would recommend is just generate the 15 over here without adding in the dollar sign, and then add it in manually like this at the end. You could even type your own. So let's say I was talking about hours over here, and as you can see, it automatically populates. I'm going to go back to dollars just so people don't get confused again with the South African accent. Okay, great. These are the common mistakes that we often see. And so I would keep that in mind when you start exploring this awesome column. The next thing is the limitations that we have. When you start playing around, play around with the type of columns that we have over here. As you can see, we have a vast majority of the columns, but things like timeline, for example, aren't one of the columns that we can use. Timeline specifically is because it's confusing for the system. It doesn't understand if we're talking about the start date, the end date, the days in between, and so that isn't one of the possibilities. The next is cross item and column summary. So what do I mean by that? Well, basically, the formula works across an item, meaning that I can say 14 times by 30 equals 420. What I cannot do is say 14 times by 20 equals 45, which obviously it does not. I cannot say 14 times 5 equals 3. I can do it across the item only. Another thing that I can do, that I can't do, sorry, is use this, this footnote at the bottom. This footnote cell cannot be used into the formula yet. This is something that has been requested a lot, and I am a huge fan of this. For example, the ability to be able to work out the percentage that this order is in the order of them all. Unfortunately, this is not yet a possibility. So just keep this in mind that you can do it across the item. Lastly, we cannot change a status column. My absolute dream would be to say that if revenue is over 100K, for example, make it an enterprise account and then change the status. Unfortunately, this is also not possible, so keep that in mind. Okay, great. Now, before we go into the Q&A, I want to show you our formula column, sorry, our article. Now, this is a great place where you can start looking at the different formulas. They give you when you would use it. They explain how it would come across, how you need to build it. So once you're getting started, I really recommend that you come into this article and start looking at the different possibilities. You can always send a message to support@monday.com or give us a call. We're here 24/7 and we can help you understand why the formula column isn't working, where you got stuck, where you're not understanding yet. And I really just appreciate you guys spending the time with me. Please ask all of the questions that you have in the Q&A so it doesn't get lost in the chat, and I'm going to address all of them that I can. You can also ask questions regarding just my general workflow. For example, I want to show you something quickly, how we can get the users to automatically, the customers to automatically fill this in. Well, we can do this through the form. The form is basically a way to take every single one of your columns and embed it onto a general website. So when people fill in all of these variables, and so they fill in the fact that they once thought themselves, it will automatically be generated over here. We can also make it automatically generate the order origin as a website. And so immediately, without me needing to put in any information, all of this can already be filled. I really hope that this has showed you how awesome this formula column is. It is probably my favorite column on this platform. And I hope you guys think so too. Okay, great. We are coming to the end of this presentation. I really, really appreciate the fact that you all took your time to learn about the formula column. I'm personally a big fan, and I hope you guys are also now. I'm sorry I didn't get to answer everyone's questions, but if you have any more questions, you can send a message to support. Also, I would really recommend for everyone that isn't on the pro plan to play around with this formula, try it out for 2 weeks for free, and also play around with the time tracking. This is also on the pro plan. I think it is a really cool feature that helps many of our customers. And have a great day.